Yama, everyone. Welcome to the State Library of New South Wales online programs and to this very special NAIDOC Week panel event, Heal Country, with Darug artists, educators and knowledge holders, Erin Wilkins, Jasmine Seymour, Leanne Watson and Rhiannon Wright. My name is Marika Duchinsky. I'm a Gomeroi woman and a project officer in the library's Indigenous engagement team. I'd like to begin our panel session by acknowledging the custodians of the unceded land on which I'm live streaming from right now, the land on which I grew up and live today, the Wadi Wadi people of the Dharawal Nation, as well as the custodians of the lands from which viewers join us, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I extend that respect to First Nations viewers who join us this evening also. I would also like to acknowledge Darug people because although I'm currently situated on Dharawal land, it is Darug lands, waters and skies that we are going to be talking about tonight. Darug sovereignty and ongoing care for and connection to their beautiful river country. And so I acknowledge and pay my respects to Darug people and elders as well. This year's NAIDOC Week theme, Heal Country, calls for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to continue to seek greater protections for our lands, our waters, our sacred sites, and our cultural heritage from exploitation, desecration, and destruction. It is a call for stronger measures to recognise, protect, and maintain all aspects of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and heritage. This extends to our sovereign rights to our lands, and is an opportunity to highlight the unbroken and custodial role we as First Nations people have with and for our lands, as well as the ongoing action to resist the invasive forces that threaten our lands in myriad ways. NAIDOC Week itself was born from resistance and protest, which is just as important to acknowledge and reflect on as it is to celebrate. Having said that, I do hope everyone is having a deadly NAIDOC Week, and tonight I really look forward to reflecting on this year's NAIDOC Week theme with our panel. Tonight, Darug artists, educators and knowledge holders, Erin Wilkins, Jasmine Seymour, Leanne Watson and Rhiannon Wright will take part in a panel discussion reflecting on what healing Darug country means to them. Erin, Jasmine, Leanne and Rhiannon are the central people and storytellers in the library's Darubbin exhibition, and anyone that has visited the exhibition may be familiar already with our panellists tonight. But for anyone that hasn't visited or hasn't been in Sydney to see it, the Darubbin exhibition is an invitation to traverse the river, Darubbin or the Hawkesbury River, with 4 Darug women whose stories are at the heart of the exhibition. Rhiannon, Jasmine, Erin and Leanne have generously shared their culture, perspectives and the stories of 7 special and significant sites along Darubbin. Darug people have lived on the river for millennia, but as you may have heard in the exhibition, or as I'm sure you'll hear tonight, the stories that are widely told and celebrated in the region today are so often the settler colonial stories in which Darug perspectives and experiences are often unacknowledged. Similarly, the cultural heritage sites in the region are almost exclusively colonial and do not reflect Darug people, histories or culture. In that sense, the Darubbin exhibition showcases the importance not only of storytelling, but of truth-telling. And I hope you get a chance to visit the exhibition, but if not, it will be accessible online as a virtual exhibition very soon. So please keep your eye out for that. And now I'll introduce our panel. Erin, Jasmine, Leanne and Rhiannon, are you there?
Warami.
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 Hello, hello. So I'll introduce everyone formally before we get started today. Jasmine, I'll start with you. Jasmine Seymour is a Darug woman and a descendant of Maria Locke, daughter of Yarramundi, the Burrabirrongal elder who met Governor Phillip on the banks of the Hawkesbury River in 1791. He is a teacher, artist and published author of children's books which integrate Darug language throughout, Baby Business, which tells the story of a ceremony that welcomes baby to country, and Kui Mitiga, Come Here Friend, which is an invitation to walk on Darug country. Erin Wilkins is a strong and proud Aboriginal woman of the Darug people. She loves passing down her culture and knowledge to her children and grandchildren. She enjoys being on country, protecting and connecting with culture, participating in traditional cultural practices, and encouraging others to share the old ways. Erin's passion as a cultural educator is to continually work towards promoting and strengthening connection to culture and country through education with people of all ages and backgrounds. Rhiannon Wright is a proud Burrabirrongal woman from the Darug Nation, who is the daughter of Leanne Mulgo Watson and granddaughter of Darug elder Auntie Edna Watson. Rhiannon has grown up on Darug country and spent her life learning culture, traditions, and language through her mother and grandmother, in turn passing on and sharing this knowledge to her daughter, Lyra, keeping the unbroken chain of culture that has extended for thousands of years alive and strong through the generations. Rhiannon is currently a part of Darug Custodian Aboriginal Corporation and is the Aboriginal Education Officer at Windsor South Public, where she very proudly shares and connects culture, language, and knowledge with students and the wider community. And lastly, Leanne. Leanne Watson is a Darug woman commonly known in the Aboriginal community as Mulgo, meaning black swan. Leanne is the daughter of Auntie Edna Watson and Uncle Alan Watson, elders of the Darug community. Leanne was born and raised in Sydney. She is now a mother and grandmother and has spent her life living, promoting and protecting Darug culture, people and places. Leanne has been director of the Darug Custodian Aboriginal Corporation for the past 15 years. She started painting at a young age, taught by her mother, Auntie Edna Watson, and her brother, Bundaluk Watson, and is now an accomplished artist. Her paintings and artwork are renowned by many. Leanne's artwork is inspired by her family, Darug country, the environment, and life experiences. Thank you all so much for joining me. And for everyone that has just joined the live stream, there will be time for a Q&A at the end. But if your question relates to a topic at hand, then we may address the questions as we go. So please do pop your questions in the chat. If we don't get to them throughout the chat, we'll try and loop back around to them at the end, but there will be time for a Q&A. Erin, Jasmine, Leanne and Rhiannon, thank you again so much for joining me. My first question for the panel is a really broad one, but I just wanted to know, when you think of this year's NAIDOC Week theme, Heal Country, what does that conjure up for you, or what does that mean for you? Who wants to kick us off?
Country is a term that encompasses everything. So it's not just the land or the waterways, it's us as a people too. And I think that if we, I don't see myself, and many Aboriginal people don't see themselves as being on or in country. We are country. We are part of that intrinsic web of cultural life and cultural society. So being able to heal country is about healing and learning to understand who we are, to heal who we are, and to heal and understand every other person that is standing beside us.
Beautifully said.
You covered that well. I was thinking, as soon as I think heal country, I think heal people, heal our mob. So it's us connected to country. So to me, it feels like it's all one.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, here in the Hawkesbury and in Sydney, we of course are experiencing a pandemic, but that first pandemic, of course, happened with the first fleet, where, you know, up to 80% of the Darug people were wiped out. And so when you're considering that effect upon us, and healing country and healing community, and the trauma of colonisation and of everything that has happened, you know, healing country for us is very much about healing community. and healing people and coming together and sort of, you know, beginning the journey of really making ourselves strong.
I think as well that to make us strong and to heal like ourselves and country as well, it has a lot to do with especially out in the Hawkesbury, actually being on country and having access to our sites and things like our sacred sites and things. I believe that country needs culture just as much as what we do, and to be on country and visit our sites is healing for the country, but also for us as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the country needs to hear our language.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just listening to the radio then, and Jacqueline Troy was on talking about her language and how they had created this snow song, and it was making me think about us and our river project and how, you know, very much the language of the Hawkesbury, the Jaraban, has really woken us up, but also has woken country up in a big way. And so language is power, language is knowledge, language is so important. And it's been such a privilege to be part of that project out there. And I do think it needs to be spoken to country. So words are very important, and how we speak about each other is very important, and how we speak about country is extremely important.
It's not just really about country itself, it's about so much more. It's such a complex network. Jasmine, you mentioned earlier, and you did too, Rhiannon, and what it reminded me of was the stories of the dispossession of Darug people that you tell in the Daruban exhibition. So the dispossession of Darug people from Darug lands, which is stories are woven quite strongly throughout the Daruban exhibition, as well as your commentary on the fact that so much of Darug land is now considered privately owned property, which inhibits Darug people's ability to access significant sites, to care for country in a proper and healthy way, let alone heal country. And so I wanted to ask the panel, can we even have a conversation about healing country without having access to country, without having land back? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like it's a hard one because depending on who you're talking to, people can be very funny about, especially when it's private property, they can be very funny about when you're talking about visiting your sites or having access to them. It's something that a lot of people are kind of scared of when they shouldn't be, because they feel like we might just go in and take it from them or something, which is not what we want to do at all. But just having that access and being able to visit and care for it is all we really want. But yeah, it's complicated, I suppose.
Leanne, what were your thoughts?
It is a really hard question. I think a lot of the trauma that I carry has a lot to do with everything that I've lost and everything that we've lost. It's really hard to get our cultural connections back when we can't access the places that we need to. And I come from a family that has had a lot of loss and blocked off from a lot of places. So to me, to heal, I don't think we'll ever heal properly until we can access our sites. And I don't know, it's really hard to explain. It's the loss is just absolutely horrific what the Darug people have endured, and to heal is going to take a lot, and hopefully the next generations after me can heal, but I don't think that our access to country is like healing country is only like just a really brief explanation of what we're actually healing. And it's going to take a lot for Aboriginal people to heal, and country, we need to connect to the country. Like it's not as simple as just healing places. It's a really massive thing for our people to heal. Hard to explain. That's really hard to explain.
Mm.
And we don't, I mean, we would love to have land back. We would love that. But it's about having access, not ownership. It's just having access. And I think, and the others will agree, that since the Jarubin project has been in showcasing, there's been a lot of interest from landowners for us to come and visit their properties, to show them what it means, or what's on their property, and
Wow.
that's huge.
Can I
So
talk-
having
sorry.
land would be amazing, but it's not about the ownership, it's about the access.
Yeah, and when I talk about the loss that my family's endured, I'm not talking about the loss of land. I'm talking about the loss of our stories and the connections that we lost. We lost connections to family. Like, there's a lot of things that we were very lucky to have kept, but there's a lot of things that my people and my family have lost. But that's not talking about the loss of land. That's part of it, but a small part of what we've lost.
Mm.
Jasmine?
I think, the land situation is massive, because we also have these borders which say which country we belong to. And yet we know we would have been connected to so many of the Aboriginal groups. And that sort of sense of like, you belong here and you belong here, that ownership over land is really something that needs to be healed as well, because it causes a lot of problems within Aboriginal communities. And we know we would have been way more connected to each other than we are now. And that is a real sadness, for many of us, that we are treated like that, or that we treat others like that. And so healing country is also about healing those connections between each other through land, through acknowledging land, through acknowledging the connections that we have through land to each other. That those massive big songline stories that connect all of Australia to each other. This is the most beautiful thing about our culture, and yet we have been sliced in half by borders and made to behave in ways that we probably wouldn't have behaved in. And so, that's where a lot of loss comes from: loss of connection, loss of culture, loss of stories, loss of families.
And we're all quite lucky. We all know where we're from. Like, a lot of our mob they don't know where they're from. They're still searching. That loss is like, just, I can't even comprehend that I wouldn't know where I'm from. So it's that type of loss that I talk about. I've lost a lot of things, but there's some people out there that have lost all of their identity, which is really sad. It's that type of healing. And like, when we say heal country, that's part of it, because they need their country to heal, but they still have to find it. So we are quite lucky that we do know where we're from.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Thank you all so much. I wanted to ask a little bit about the role of acknowledging history and what that might play in either healing country or healing ourselves, or looking at it more holistically. But it's, again, something that I've heard you all talk about quite a lot in my conversations with you, and that's conversations that we've had around the lack of truth telling that happens in the place where you are from, where the history that is so commonly and widely celebrated is the colonial history of the past 230 whatever years, compared to the millennia that since time immemorial that Darug people have been living on the river. So I wanted to ask if you could elaborate a little bit on that, and the importance of coming to terms with the colonial history of the place where you live as a mechanism to, move forward and, work towards the healing that you describe. Rhiannon? Or anyone?
No, I think that's a huge thing that all people should know about. They should know the true history and what's hawkesbury, especially in the Hawkesbury. There's so much stuff that has happened here, especially like with our people that people don't even know about. All the colonial aspects are so widely celebrated, and we see so much of it. Even if you just walk through Windsor, all you see is all like Thompson Square, everything is all colonial. There's nothing to say that our people were there or that we pretty much even existed. And there's so much depth and history and knowledge to this area, like with our culture and our traditions and our knowledge that just people in the Hawkesbury have no idea about. And I think that's a huge part of healing and moving forward, is people knowing the history and what's happened here, and that there is that deeper story than what you just see.
Yeah, it was so interesting to me going to some of the sites that you took us to, and just seeing the kind of, not the fanfare, but just all the information and all the pride in the colonial heritage sites, all the information that is readily available about them. But, you consider one place and its colonial heritage and its colonial history, for example, Thompson Square, as you mentioned, Rhiannon. But there is nothing at all that is mentioned about the fact that that was a corroboree ground, and how, do Darug people feel about one of their special sites, now being used in this way? Or, at least there's nothing to at least acknowledge the history of this very important place, which is Thompson Square. It's a town hub. It's the centre of town. Everyone knows about, the heritage Georgian buildings and whatever, but what about Darug histories? It's really quite stark, that sort of what is celebrated and in turn what receives heritage protection versus what doesn't. And I really felt that there was so much violence to me in that erasure. I know that's something that you've also talked about in your interviews that you did for the exhibition.
You can be quiet.
I think the Hawkesbury, like as I've said before, was built on the back of Darug people. The Hawkesbury needed women to grow their population. The children were used as slaves. This is all truth telling that you never ever get to hear, that people don't want to hear, because in Australia we celebrate youth and we celebrate the young colony and the achievements of the people, and we don't have any concept of time or age and anything prior to that is just erased completely. And so it is extremely violent. And, I grew up in the Hawkesbury. My family has always lived in the Hawkesbury. I went to schools in the Hawkesbury and we were never taught a single thing about the Darug people. And I lived on Andrew Thompson Drive. And still Andrew Thompson today is still celebrated as the most important man in the Hawkesbury. And yet he would have been like a form of martial law out there, even though because he was the person responsible at the time. And so to never have anything said about that is so deeply disturbing. And what does that say about us as a nation? That, that we can't talk about it, that we're never going to talk about it.
People don't like us to talk about it because they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I've been told all the time to not bring up the truth because it makes people uncomfortable. But it's made a lot of people uncomfortable not telling the truth. So I think it's about time that it was told. And then we could celebrate our culture and our families and our connections rather than celebrating out here where we are, the colonial history. 'Cause
Yeah, and it's in that discomfort.
yeah,
Sorry, Leanne.
the impacts of the colonialism are still today. Like, it's not something that's happened previously and we all just get over it. Like, the effects are still there today, and the legislation's still in place today. Like, none of that's changed. So the systems of colonialism are here, and they're not being looked at or thought about until, you know, people sort of say to us, well, you know, get over it. But the systems are in place from that, and it's not helping us to heal.
The system is working as it was designed.
Yeah, it was. And there's also organisations that are still here implementing those systems that make it really difficult for traditional owners. And those same systems are in place all across Australia that are put in that place to tread on the traditional owners right across. So these institutions that have been set up, they need to be ripped down, and traditional owners need to speak on their own country as well. So there's a lot of problems that need to be fixed, but slowly, at least when we do projects like this, we get to get some of our stories back. We've moved on a lot of the language. We have accessed a lot of areas that we haven't previously been able to. So these types of projects that we've done, like the Jarubin project, it's a really good thing for Darug Mob.
Erin, did you have any thoughts on that question?
I think it's been pretty much covered. But like Leanne and like everybody was saying, that we know there's a colonial history. We know that heritage is there. But yes, we were there too. We were there first. We've been living on this land for thousands and thousands of years. And to have not been recognised or acknowledged as such, it's damaging. And if we want to, like this NAIDOC theme is to heal country. If we want to heal country, we need that truth telling. We need to understand that our people were here and how strong our people were and how proud they were. But also the truth telling of that the colonial history that's shared isn't always the truth. It's a very much blurred and whitewashed story that people want to hear. And if we want to heal ourselves or heal country or become proud and be able to stand together as one, because we are so fractured, to be able to do that, there's a lot of truth telling that needs to be told. And it's not about just here, it's the whole way across Australia, the whole way up through the Torres Straits, all of that. There's a lot of truth and a lot of pain and trauma that has been swept under the carpet. And yes, we're starting to talk about it, but it's not in the limelight like it should be.
Yeah, I think, all of the policies that have affected Aboriginal Australia happened to the Darug people first. We are the most colonised, and, we don't look like the rest of Australia, and there is good reason why. But we are still Darug, we are still Aboriginal people. We very much belong here. And yet, even in Sydney, you see that there's no big celebrations of Bennelong or Pemulwuy or Barangaroo like there should be. There's no celebrations of Maria Locke, of Yarramundi, of Aunty Edna, her family who were the first Aboriginal elders into schools. We don't celebrate our people like they should be celebrated, because they have acted in defiance and resistance of the situation that has happened to them, constantly. and we still do that today, and yet we are still fighting for recognition, and that is a great sadness. And that's part of healing this country, the Hawkesbury, the whole of Sydney. So those things are something to consider too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jasmine. I might loop back a little bit and just pick up on what we talked about a little bit before in terms of, you make an important distinction between the heritage protection that colonial sites in the Hawkesbury River region receive compared to special Darug cultural heritage sites, which do not receive the same level of heritage protection and are vulnerable to things like vandalism, sand mining filtering through to vital and complex waterways, and other threats. And I'm thinking specifically actually of a site that you took me to, which I'm not going to name, but that is in the exhibition, and it's a site where there's a beautiful family of scar trees. The site is incredibly rich with food and resources that have been at that site for thousands of years. But when you stand in the site and you stand amongst that area, it's really unkempt. It's overgrown with invasive weeds that choke the plants. People just drive right over it. There's trash there. You referred to it as Wiri Nura, bad country or sick country, that I've come to learn from you that that's what that means. So I wanted to ask your opinion on whether it is important to you that your special sites do receive heritage protections, or at the very least regular maintenance, or is the solution more community driven, or is it a combination of the two? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a combination of the two. That particular site, it's public and it's open, and there's no accountability held for that. And until that accountability by the particular landholders is met, and the significance of that site as a cultural site, not as significance for whatever else may be on that site. But I think things like that just shows that large agencies or government departments or agencies or organizations run by non-TOs or non-traditional custodians don't have that care factor, and their pride is in their heritage. Like, you get all these heritage listed built, like you walk through Windsor and there are hundreds of heritage listed buildings, and the pride in that and the money that the landowners, whether it be private or public, put into those heritage buildings is astounding. Yet a simple and a tenth of the amount of money that would be spent on updating or preserving those heritage buildings to protect and preserve a site that is thousands and thousands of years old is not a priority. And that's hurtful. That is extremely hurtful. And until there is, like Leanne was saying, the legislations are not in place for our people, for our sites. And until that legislation is in the forefront, and until those landowners actually take responsibility and accountability and ownership and pride more so, it's not going to happen. Like, we can be handed over sites, that's great, but we don't have the funds to be able to maintain those sites. The big organizations have them. The government buildings, the government agencies, they have them. And they have those sites, and be able to not play into the preservation of those sites it's disgraceful, to be honest.
Yeah, that site borders a creek, and my auntie and uncle, who he's 94, he remembers when that creek was crystal clear and you could see to the bottom, and you could see the native orchids when the high tide would come in. It was that clear. You could see it sounded like a paradise. And this is what the Hawkesbury River was like up until around the 1940s, I believe. It was beautiful and clear. You could see to the bottom. And yet it is full of diesel from the speedboats that tear through it on the weekends. It's full of refuse. It's full of, pesticides from the turf farms. Some of the RAF base flame retardant goes into there. Just about everything you could think flows into the Jarubin. It is not a place that we actually care for at all. And yet it is a really special place and a sacred place. Anywhere in the Hawkesbury, you dust off, a little bit of ground, and you are faced with Aboriginal history or Aboriginal occupation. You can't avoid it. It is always there. It is still there, and yet we really don't care for it at all. And so you're right, Erin. What we care for is sometimes not really the right things.
We really need community to get on board to help us to look after our sites. I get really disappointed with all of this whole area out here. We can pick 2 sites that off the top of my head are just sites that have to be saved. There's no resources for us to do that. And it seems to be that we don't get any help to do that. There are a lot of people that do look after different areas. We have really passionate like bush regen teams and different people in the community that go out and they do care for country. But it's such a massive job to do that, they're managing it, but they're not healing or fixing country. For us to have the knowledge holders out there and help to regenerate the bush foods and things like that are very under-resourced, and we do try and do things like that, and for years we have, but with no resources whatsoever, and it's all just in our own time. It seems to be if we push to get sites protected and we get APs and that nominated, it gets given to these departments that don't really have the connection to the sites. It's just a too hard basket, really. We visit some sites and just to keep that connection to them, but there's just none of them that we've really been able to be able to care for properly, because we just have, we don't really ever get them handed back as co-management or to look after or anything like that. We're lucky just to go in there and have a quick look and leave. And it would be really good for community to get on board with a lot of the private properties that have some of these really significant dreaming and creation sites to look after those. But I've been working in cultural heritage for over 30 years and I'm at my wit's end with it because it doesn't seem to do any good for the traditional owners.
Yeah, and I really feel like Maroota up around the Hawkesbury, up around that area is in really a dire position with the sand mining that is going on up there. And, massive chunks of country are just being carted away and being turned into freeways. And so this is very, very, very bad, sites are being dissected in two with roads, and this has always happened up there. But this complete lack of care for that place is just astonishing, where it's probably one of the most significant places in Sydney.
And then you have the people as well that when they find out about special sites and areas, they actually go and purposely destroy them or vandalize them. So we have to be careful with which sites are actually known, because there are people out there who still have that mindset that they feel like they need to be destroyed, which is really sad, especially in this day and age.
Someone in the Q&A chat has asked, what does it mean when country is sick? Which I thought might be good to bring in that question now to the panel.
You can, when we go out on country, some of the country, it's just fully overgrown with weeds. If we go to, there's a site that's in my head, that's our creation site. The sites are fading because they haven't had that human interaction. Like we've been to birthing pools that are absolutely filthy. It's just filthy and they're not cared for. Whereas our people would have burnt, we would have got rid of those weeds. The water would have been clear. It would have been used all the time. Go out there and drink the water. We go out there now and there's all this pesticide runoff that runs into all of our waterways. There's all these weeds, like filthy, just filthy water. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, and
we cared for our country. We looked after it. It's not like that at all now.
Yeah, like we said earlier, country needs culture. So you can see when there is sick country, it's where I feel like our people haven't been for a while, haven't had access to look after it, and it's just been overgrown with weeds and things like Mum just said.
all along the Hawkesbury, you will see lantana and broken fences, wire fences, and it's just a tangle of weeds and wire. And then you go up into some of the forests where you really see country flourishing, and you see how it might have been or how it should be, even though that's not being cared for as it should be either. But, you know, along the floodplains where they farmed, this is where it is really sick, where that country is really, you know, covered in just, you know, the debris of agriculture. And that tangled wire and lantana is just such a massive symbol of the just, you know, the loss of what has been taken.
Well, the trodden grounds from agriculture. So a lot of our grass seeds or our vegetation's gone. So our land was soft. Our animals have soft padded feet. We didn't have hard hoofed animals that then compounded the ground that hard that our native grasses, our native vegetation can't get through. So, but country reflects on us both, like in all ways. Our well-being is mental and physical and spiritual and emotional and physical. And if we can't use country to heal ourselves through our food and our medicines, how can we help her? Do you know what I mean? It's a two-way street, and it's hard. Like, sick country makes sick people, sick community. And the only way to fix that, and it's not going to be a quick fix. We've had 200 years plus of destruction on our country, and it's going to take more than that to get it back to the way it was. So to heal country and to make sick country healthy is never going to be a quick fix. It's a process that we have to stay at, and we have to, like, really honor to be able to get her back to health.
Erin, can you talk a little bit about the cultural burning program that you are a part of out at Yalamundi Regional Park, for everyone listening?
So I think it was 2013, 2014. We had our first cultural burn on country. And that was the first time in over 150 years that Darrie Country's had cultural burn, had cultural fire back on land. And that was significant. That it took a long time. I wasn't in the process of building that, but it took a long time for us to be allowed to do that. So we've been doing that for 7 years now. And I think it's not, and it's beautiful to watch, beautiful. So you've got your babies on your hips, and you've got the children running through the burn grounds, and you've got the children watching the fire, and it changes the whole perception of fire for people. So my children personally were quite scared of fire because of the bushfires. and they're they're now little pyros, but they're like being involved in Fire Stick it's changed their mentality and it changed their appreciation for fire, and it's not, yes, it's helping heal country, it's returning practice back onto the land, but it's about the community coming together to embrace and to share those old ways. And fire in that particular instance has actually broken down so many barriers within our own community. And it's just about everybody coming together for practice on one hand. But it's about fire stick, cultural burning or cool burning or fire stick, or whichever way you want to look at it, had so much more than just rejuvenation of country. It was about looking after the ecosystems and having them balanced. It was about hunting. It was about the animals' feeding grounds. It was about healing through the smoke. There's so many levels to cultural burning or fire stick than just putting a match to dead grass. But it's come a long way. There's a lot of custodians traditionally and from surrounding mobs coming in to help with that. There's now been a big pull from private landholders in the areas, especially in the Hawkesbury, that are getting involved because they want to see how that can happen on their property to promote our cultural practice. Agencies such as the RFS, the Royal Fire Service, are getting involved and understanding what fire truly is and how that the three different burns, whether it be an ecological burn, a cultural burn, a hazard reduction burn, or whatever it is, they have all different properties and all different places. And I think the RFS is actually understanding the significance and the importance of putting it back on country. So they're involved now too. But unfortunately, we've had in the last 18 months, since almost 2 years since the fires have come through our particular region, yes, it was absolutely devastating. We lost so much land and so many animals. And unfortunately, yes, the heat from those wildfires has destroyed some of our sites. But again, we as a people, Aboriginal people, have always had to take something good off the back of something bad. And again, that's another purpose that this has done. So through the Royal Commission, I think there's like 25 recommendations that have come out about cultural burning to prevent wildfires like we've just had from the Gospers Mountain. And it's getting a lot of traction. But this is knowledge that we've had for so long. This is knowledge that nobody's ever wanted to listen to until now. But no matter where you are around, there are so many mobs actually bringing fire and bringing practice back onto country. And if you can get out and you can participate and like feel what happens when these practices take place, my best thing is to go and ask if you can be involved, participate in that. It's not just for us. Yes, there are some sites that we need to burn for ourselves and for our people, but there are sites that we invite everybody to come into. And that's another healing. It's a healing for ourselves and a healing for our country. And it's the education behind that and the awareness and the understanding that it promotes actually opens people's eyes to wanting to understand more about culture and more about sites and more about everything that like encompasses our life and our lifestyle and our culture as a whole. And I think if that's one way that we can interact and we can engage with so many people, great, because you're killing so many birds with one stone. So
I just wanted to add into that Aboriginal burning should be an Australian thing. Like, I'm very much that cultural burning is an Aboriginal thing. A lot of our seeds don't germinate without fire. A lot of our seeds don't germinate without certain animals digesting them. And the fire also assists with those animals to breed when the new sprouts come. Like, the whole thing is connected to everything. Our country won't heal without fire either. Half of the plants don't grow. Like, it just makes so much common sense to go back to the traditional ways before the whole country and ecosystems are destroyed. And fire is a massive part of that. Like, if you look into the seeds not germinating, it just makes you go, oh, well, we really do need fire. It's not just an Aboriginal thing. It's a thing that this country needs. So it's something that is a good thing for people to look into and learn about, how important the fire is for this country and how important it is for our animals to eat certain seeds and poop them out is all part of that as well, because a lot of seeds germinate that way as well. Like, people don't want our animals anymore. They're like, they say they're pests, but the country needs them.
Thanks, everyone. Someone in the chat has asked a question around language, and that ties in with one of my questions, actually. So it's a question for the panel, but maybe you might want to start, Jasmine. I'm just thinking that healing country, you know, as we've been talking about tonight, is so much more than taking care of the land physically. It extends to our relationship with one another, with our relationship to country, in which country is alive and inspirited and deeply, you know, encoded with meaning. And Jasmine, I wanted to ask you about the role that language plays and language revitalisation plays in deepening our understanding of country. I know that you've been running a number of Darug language workshops of late. So I thought, yeah, I'll direct the question to you.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary. My position is, I think language is the big violence that happens to Aboriginal people, that is still happening to Aboriginal people, that we don't understand how our language works, is, you know, a massive issue and causes a lot of the problems that we have with lateral violence. And, you know, because those people that have language and those who don't are sort of considered to be more authentically Aboriginal. And yet, if you have access to your language, you know, you have access to so much. In our community language lessons, it has been the most incredible experience to see Darug people coming together, learning together, and sharing their stories and their language together. And you just have a sense of well-being, and you feel safe and you feel connected, and you feel like there is a healing happening. And so if this is happening to us in a small community language session, imagine what would happen to most language nations if you could be, you know, have access to your language. I think in Australia, we're obsessed with literacy. Most English speaking nations are, and yet we should probably be obsessed with language and how language works, because we are, after all, a multilingual nation. And, you know, with many, many different people who live here now. So it would make sense for us all to understand how language works. But particularly for Indigenous people, that we don't understand that is a massive devastation. And I think that is one of the wrongs that needs to be righted. And so, you know, I know all across Australia, language revitalisation is happening, and it is such a privilege to be part of it here on Darug country.
Thanks, Jasmine. We are fast running out of time, so I thought I would quickly jump into the chat and have a look at some of the questions coming through. And one of them is around looking to the future and looking to the next generation. And so I guess, yeah, I wanted to ask you all, not only as mothers, but also as educators, about the role that you see of younger generations of Aboriginal people in terms of protecting and healing Darra country. Rhiannon, I've had a few conversations with you, I think, about, you know, you passing on that knowledge to Lyra, and how important it is to continue that unbroken chain of knowledge being passed down through Darug women, you know, which is knowledge handed down over thousands of generations. It's so extraordinarily special. I wondered, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is, as you said, extraordinarily special. It's something that needs to happen, because our children are our future. If they're not the ones to step up, and like, if we don't pass on our knowledge and our culture and our language to them, then it ends with us. Like, they're the ones that are going to carry it on. They're going to carry on everything that we've been doing, everything our elders have been doing and our ancestors have been doing for tens of thousands of years. And it's so important for us to share all that we have with them, so that they have the knowledge to be able to do that, to be involved with culture, and to have to be able to continue on with it.
Yeah, I think I think building up Aboriginal identity and making kids feel that is a very special thing, and that is something to be very proud of, is really, really important. Because, you know, I'm a primary school teacher, and sometimes we walk around at the beginning of the year and just to check in who's there, and we see the Aboriginal kids sort of looking at the ground because they don't want to be identified. And yet, you know, when you have really strong cultural programs and language programs in school, it builds prestige amongst them, and it makes them feel really proud. You know, and it is something we need to be proud of. We need to celebrate it constantly. It's an incredible thing, this history of Australia we have that belongs to us. And it's so important for these kids just to walk into their lives feeling strong in that.
Yeah. So I co-facilitate a youth leadership program for Aboriginal children with a good friend of mine, and it is amazing that the amount of kids that you get that have no idea who they are or where they fit in or their connection. And at the end of the program, it's those kids that are going back into their schools and leading their school through cultural programs and cultural recognition. And I think being able to provide a safe space for those young kids to be able to connect freely in their own time and in their own way will create that strong connection. And unfortunately, we're in a society where there's so much technology going on and there's so much socialite activity. Why would you want to go sit on country? Why would you want to go do this? And it's not only hurting us, it's hurting themselves, it's hurting the land. But there's going to be a time that if we don't encourage them to learn and to connect and to understand, there's going to be a massive break, worse than we've ever received in our culture. And it's our jobs to get those kids back onto country, to get them to connect and to get them to understand. And if they don't, well, we don't want it if they don't. Like, we just need to do that. And to be able to do that and to know that they can pass that knowledge on to their next generation is probably the best feeling that I will have, in their pride and their strength, and being able to walk tall amongst their peers with the knowledge and the understanding that they have.
Thanks, Erin. Leanne, did you have any thoughts on that? We're nearly at the...
We need to break a lot of the stereotyping. We need to stop Aboriginal people being invisible, like in our areas, and we need to make kids realise it is something to be proud of, because to be an Aboriginal person isn't easy. It can be really difficult. It can be difficult within mob. It can be difficult within community. we just need to keep doing what we're doing. Try and educate as much as we can. Try and get into these areas and get kids to come in and have a look and be proud and get that connection happening. The connection to country is also coming up a lot lately, that it's got a lot to do with mental health. Like, country heals us as well. If we can't get these kids connected to their country and connected to culture, where the whole society's lost, the whole country's lost. It's not just Aboriginal people. And we need to make it easier for people to be Aboriginal and not have to put up with all of the trauma and all of the bullying that goes on in a lot of places. But to have that connection and have that balance and have that country's rhythm, it's all something that we all need to work really hard to get the kids to start doing. Dance on country is another big thing, to get that rhythm and centered and connected and make it easier. Like, I think it just gets made too hard by a lot of different things. Stereotyping is a big thing, the way Aboriginal people are treated. You know, people's comments sometimes can be really harmful to young people. So we need to stop that and make people understand that it's something to be celebrated and it's something wonderful.
Not a shame. Yeah.
Always was, always will be, and always should be. Had to put that one in there.
Oh, look, there's no better way to wrap up, because you can't refute that. It's, you know, it's always was, always will be. That's exactly right, Leanne. I think that's a really good and powerful place to end tonight's conversation. I hope that we got to a few of your questions. We didn't actually get time for a Q&A. I should have known with this mob we wouldn't have too much time after the yarn, but yeah, I hope we did answer a few of them. Jasmine, Rhiannon, Leanne and Erin, thank you all so much for joining me tonight. This has been a really enriching conversation, and I hope everyone in the audience has enjoyed it as well. You can please do check out the Darobbin exhibition, or check out the work that everybody has been doing with Professor Grace Karskens on the Real Secret River Darobbin project, or the work of the Darug Custodian Aboriginal Corporation, or Jasmine and Leanne's books. There's so many ways that you can connect with these amazing women beyond this conversation and support their work. So wishing everyone a beautiful rest of your NAIDOC week, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rika.
Bye.
Anu.
Yeah, no.